when it comes down to the claim and with liability, everyone will need to be defended, and that's where your insurance is so important, because you want to make sure that your defense will cover the attorneys that are hired to defend you. Even if it gets to the point where the claim is thrown out of court for you, you still have had those attorney fees and defense costs that you don't want to have to take out of your pocket. So in this case, it could be both, but we would want to know who was actually liable for it. So let's go. I think there's another one that kind of, this is a trick question. And I don't know if we even need to launch this with this savvy audience and what we talked about so far. So maybe we'll just skip over this one and just talk about it just for a minute, if that's okay with you, Kelly.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I think with this group is so smart that we don't have to really go into it too far. But the question here was the professional liability doesn't cover anyone tripping or falling in any space. And that's what we talked about, the difference between a professional liability claim, which is a result of your service, and a general liability claim, which would be the result of someone tripping or falling or some type of thing like that. So this is just to point out the difference between professional liability and general liability. And that's the reason for this slide. But with this smart group, I think they would have gotten that one.
They're on to you.
They're on to me. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go a little further and talk about premises liability, because honestly, premises liability brings forth more claims. There are more claims brought forth with general liability than there are with professional. So this is very important and involves so many leases that another thing to be in compliance with your lease requirements. So in order to have premises liability, we would ask for location space and the square footage of your space. So now, again, when we talk square footage, we don't want the square footage of this entire beautiful building that's shown here. We want the square footage of the space that you're renting in here. If you're renting the entire building, then yes, we would want the square footage of all of that, but oftentimes you're renting a floor or a suite or something like that. So when we ask for the basis for premises liability or your general liability, it can be based on sales, but we find for the most part it's based on square footage. And that's the kind of thing that we would require you to know is the square footage. And then, of course, your lease requirements are important, because your landlord is most likely going to want proof of insurance. They may require certain liability limits. They may require an additional insured endorsement, which means they want to be named on your policy as an additional insured. And then what type of coverages are needed. So what I suggest is when you get your lease, and maybe even before,